contract extension. You're damn well right. Better make him the manager over the next series of years and give him a legitimate opportunity.
We used heart attack.
Managers on a Major League Baseball team don't make decisions. You're going to lose credibility. And like I said, credibility in this situation is worse than losing your job.
Good morning, everybody. This is another edition of the Passball Show, brought to you by Two Ways, One Passion Food Truck, located in Scranton, Pennsylvania, by St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey, also by johnpla.com. A couple things we're going to get into a world of baseball, sports, and unifying America. I kind of have a little issue with Periscope. Unfortunately, it's not allowing me to save my videos to my camera roll. So if there's anybody out there that may be able to shed a little light on that situation and potentially help me out, it actually could save my interest in wanting to make videos on Periscope, because really the only reason I was doing it is so my videos would get saved to the camera roll on my iPhone. But since that hasn't happened in the last couple times, I really have no interest for it. We are trying YouTube Live for the first time today. We'll see how that ends up working out. This could be a way that I end up replacing Periscope. Problem, obviously, I need a video saved to my camera roll. You know, through the settings, it's allowing me to do that. But when I do the videos, if you get to see, maybe through Twitter, the 5 or 6 videos that I tried to do as a test were not working, but whatever. Like I said, the show belongs to you, so if you want to comment on the Facebook Live feed, YouTube Live, you could comment as well. You could also give the show a call. The number is 732-364-3598. So the thing that kind of stands out to me is I'm thinking about this whole mess in Houston, and it kind of seems like it's one of those things where you know that there's some dirt there, some stuff that just doesn't seem like it's right, something that you kind of sense that this organization is trying to get some sort of advantage over the other teams that they're playing. And evidence has been proven that this has been a devious type of organization. We're talking about the Houston Astros in Major League Baseball. They've been doing things that are kind of toeing a line of what is ethical and what is not ethical. And I'm sure, once this report has come out about the 2017 playoffs and using the cameras to steal signs with the tapping of the bat against the dugout and the whistling and stuff like that, we really have something at our hands that we could talk about the seriousness of this and how it really is against the rules of baseball. But once again, we could always talk about what are the rules of baseball and what are the unwritten rules about baseball. And I know a lot of people get upset and they want to call the unwritten rules and make rules really out to be subjective in what it is that they want it to be. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem ethical. So therefore, it's against the rules. Yet there is no rule that states, to the T exactly what you're implying. But, if you look at the Astros and what they are doing, or at least what they've been doing, kind of gives you the feeling, right, that things aren't on the up and up. And we want to dispute, if we can, what is cheating and what is not cheating. But the important point that I wanted to bring up about this, because I don't think this has been discussed as much, is its implications on the entirety of the game. And the other part I'm going to talk about is the fans' perspective and how they always want to see other people fail. They want to see people go down. They want to see the celebrities of the celebrities to go down, the most known go down, and people to fail, and really almost for the likes of somebody that is not popular or doesn't have a name that's out there in the spotlight, wants to see them put pretty much in the same category as they are. And this is the part of it that kind of bothers me, because we can talk about a couple things that are very to me, kind of bring out the worst in me. And one of them is our treatment of players that have been basically taken away from the game or blackballed from their existence, and their accomplishments don't count because of what we like to constitute or view as cheating. We want to define cheating based really off of anything that we want it to be. You know, if something is a little bit unethical or a little bit of a competitive advantage, or some team or players trying to use whatever information it can, maybe in a gamesmanship way, that, you know, it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. And based off of the way somebody's feelings are hurt, it's going to impact the way that they judge what's going on. And that kind of does frustrate me a little bit because, you know, we look at stuff that's against the rules, and stuff that's against the rules should have some sort of penalty to it. But gamesmanship is existed in all of sports, let alone baseball, for the existence of any sort of competition. And going back before the advent of sports, there were whatever competition between two individuals or two groups of individuals, one individual or group of individuals would look to try to see what they can use to their advantage to be able to defeat their opponent. And that's what happens in a world of sports. You take the information you got, and yes, sometimes it's a skills competition, sometimes it's your athletes against their athletes, or, you know, of course in an individual sport it's mano a mano, but you know, you take whatever information, and as you look at the sport of baseball as being saturated and taken over by analytics and information, it would behoove one team to do everything that they can from their own perspective to have an advantage over that of another team. And the Houston Astros obviously have taken whatever the line is and probably crossed it. You talk about the line of what is gamesmanship and deviousness to cheating and doing everything you can to possibly win a game. And then you look at the other side of it, of course, and if you are a pro Houston Astros person, and you don't have to be a fan, you may have taken the side of the Astros. Hey, maybe they didn't necessarily do anything wrong, and I'm going to assume that that opinion is completely unbiased. In other words, if you're a Houston Astros fan and you know the only reason that you're siding with the Houston Astros is because you're a Houston Astros fan, then in this particular instance, your opinion should not matter as much as that of an objective opinion, a subjective opinion, an opinion of somebody that has no dog in the fight. You're gonna, you know, if a Houston Astros player or the organization did something that was 100 times worse, you'd side with them because you're a Houston Astros fan. That applies to every fan in every sport. So we understand that biasness exists when it comes to stuff like that. But the most important thing that I have to bring up here is, you know, the Astros, how far were they looking to push the envelope here? And how much of a disservice was it to the other teams and the competition that they were having? Now, you could say, if you're an Astros apologist or an apologist in this particular situation, well, you know, every other team has that same type of data that they could use. Now, there is a rule that states, you know, you can't use, you know, television equipment or cameras. You know, you look at the situation with the New England Patriots a couple of years ago, and I'm not going to use the suffix GATE because it doesn't exist, but we know what we're talking about. The Patriots using cameras for their own advantage, taping other teams' practices. So we've established that that's wrong. But, you know, when there's cameras, whether it's center field cameras, or you could talk about any network camera that's pointed in a certain spot to give teams, whether it's an analytics staff, a front office, or even the bench, an advantage to know what's coming, it does take away from the skills that are on the field when we use it in baseball and any other sport as a skills competition. And that part kind of does bother me. But, you know, you ask yourself, all right, what are the implications, or what should be the implications of what the Houston Astros are doing? Now, are we going to push to blackball the Houston Astros similarly to the way good baseball players and all-time great baseball players have been blackballed from baseball's Hall of Fame? In other words, is there anything that could be done to take away, perhaps, the Houston Astros World Series championship of 2017? Now, I'm not in favor of it. I'll be honest. I'll give you a short, quick answer and let you know exactly my thought on the topic. Now, you could believe the same thing. You could disagree. That's what this is about. But what are you going to do when you disgrace your sport to a point where you start taking away World Series championships. It's like college football and college basketball. I mean, we see in our own eyes who won the national championship, but because a college or amateur player is ruled as ineligible, that championship that that team won with that player on it all of a sudden doesn't count. So you're going to tell me that something before my own eyes, something that I viewed, you viewed, existed, was crowned after it was done as a championship, should not exist. I don't believe in that whatsoever. I think that's embarrassing. And in fact, I'm going to touch a little bit more on this particular part of it in a minute. But we're going to talk about Hall of Fame players in baseball that are being blackballed and being held out of the sport for reasons. Now, you can talk about cheating, steroids. You want to view that as cheating, or you want to talk about steroids in a context of how much cheating that is compared to teams that are using cameras for their advantage to dictate what pitches are coming and what pitches are not coming. It's obviously a disadvantage for the team that's not using the cameras to their advantage. So where are we going to constitute the cheating in this level? The Houston Astros, who, you're looking at evidence. You got former players that are saying, yes, the Astros did use this. This is exactly what they did in the playoffs to try to use to their advantage. They, bashed on the dugout, kind of like Brett Gardner after he doesn't like a call in a Yankees game. And because of that, the team, the batters, knew what kind of pitch was coming because they're watching the center field cameras. Yet Barry Bonds does things in baseball that we have never seen before. There was not a more feared hitter in my lifetime. Very few feared hitters that were more feared in the history of Major League Baseball than Barry Bonds. But he's blackballed because you say, hey, he cheated, he injected himself with performance-enhancing drugs, and because of that set records that we look at to be so sacred. Well, we can talk about sacred records in Major League Baseball. Well, what about the most sacred thing in baseball? That is the World Series, which goes back to 1903. We're going to start getting into that to where we blackball teams from World Series championships in which they've won. I think it's a little far to do. But if you're not going to do that, and this is the part of it that really does bother me the most, we have to do something. We have to do something to change exactly what is happening with the judgment of our players. And we have players that are being held out of the Hall of Fame not just because of the use of steroids and performance-enhancing drugs, but because of gambling, because of their association with gamblers to maybe throw a game that's not so much on a level, but we want to talk about that as maybe being more evil than the use of performance-enhancing drugs. Well, how about we try to rank it as it applies to totally making a game not on a level because of a ridiculous competitive advantage. You can talk about the advantage that steroids have on a Major League Baseball team or a player. That kind of turns that player into Superman, allows them to see with this ridiculous eyesight to be able to potentially hit a ball further than it's ever been hit, throw a ball harder than it's ever been thrown. And obviously that player that's using steroids has a little bit of a competitive advantage, but the team that is using signs and cameras to pretty much have dictated to them as an offensive team exactly what is coming has a competitive advantage that's pretty similar to that of what we may talk about when we talk about gambling and a game not being on a level. So if I'm going to rank what the most unethical things that you could do to impact a Major League Baseball game, I'd probably go, completely betting on it, having a team on one side trying to win and the other team trying to lose. In other words, a game not being on the level as the most unethical thing that we could talk about that could happen in a Major League Baseball game. But before having juiced players and players that are using performance-enhancing drugs, I would probably rank a team using cameras completely to their advantage so their hitters know exactly what pitch is coming and using whatever signs to dictate to that player and that team exactly what's going on as being more unethical than the use of steroids and performance-enhancing drugs. So if we're not going to do anything about the Houston Astros, and obviously, listen, the commissioner, and even if you want to, make it interstate commerce and involve Congress, like Congress got involved when it came to steroids in Major League Baseball, and you want to have some sort of implication or penalty against the Houston Astros for what it is that they did. Now, obviously, it's the court of public opinion, which assumes that everybody's guilty. But we could talk about the actual court as it exists, the court system with the judge, the jury, the whole thing. You're innocent until proven guilty. So if it's proven that the Houston Astros used cameras to their advantage pretty much to win themselves a World Series championship in 2017, yes, I believe there should be some sort of penalty. There should be something that really does take away some of what the Houston Astros accomplished on the field in 2017. And if it's chosen or not chosen that baseball decides not to act on this with information that implicates them. Like I said, this is just, we're talking about things that are brought up. Mike Fiers, the former pitcher for the Astros, maybe he's a little bitter, whatever. There's people that have talked to Ken Rosenthal and have said that the Astros were using cameras to their advantage. But like I said, if we're talking about a court of law, the judge, the jury, if it comes back that the Houston Astros absolutely used this type of information to give themselves an advantage in any game, let alone postseason and World Series games, there has to be some sort of penalty against the Houston Astros. And if the decision is not made to do this, we have to go back into the history of baseball and right the wrong that exists with players that use performance-enhancing drugs. Because what you're saying is that it is okay for a team to cheat and use everything that it can, both ethical and unethical, way over the line to towing the line, to give themselves that advantage to win a championship. But we're going to basically bastardize and blackball every player that uses anything from an individual standpoint to give them an advantage over the other players that are playing. You know, straight to the point. That's it. Baseball doesn't do anything if they, like what's said, innocent until proven guilty. If the Astros are proven to have done what they did, if there is nothing done against them once they're proven guilty, then you have to take the players that are in and out of Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame because of the use of performance-enhancing drugs, in some cases because of gambling, in other cases because of politics, because the media doesn't like Albert Bell and Kurt Schilling. All these guys should be put back into Baseball's Hall of Fame, and it should be done immediately. This copyright and broadcast is authorized under internet rights granted by the World Wide Web and is solely for entertainment of our audience. Any publication, reproduction, or other use of the pictures, descriptions, and accounts of this show without the express written consent of the Passball Show, JohnPielli.com, and John Pielli, LLC, is prohibited. Any commercial or use of the program, such as by charge or admission for its showing, is similarly prohibited. So, really, the only other point that I want to make today is pretty much piggybacking off of what I just said. You want to penalize individual players for doing things that are against the rules, for things that don't necessarily put the game on a fair playing level, but it's okay for teams to use cameras. And like I said, there's a difference between stealing signs. You know, if you're that blatant in your signs that the opponents see exactly what you're doing, if you're a pitcher and you're tipping pitches, and as a batter you see that the pitcher has his arm down a little bit, he's going to throw a curveball, that's a shame. That's shame on the players. They got to do a better job of masking what it is that they're doing. If something's obvious and right in front of you, you're not supposed to close your eyes and say, oh my God, that isn't right, I should not see that. But when it comes to using cameras and going out of your way to basically dictate to yourselves exactly what the other team is doing. Hey, a pitcher is throwing a curveball. All right, if I'm a hitter, all I got to do is wait for a whistle or wait for a bat to be hit up in front of the dugout because we're watching the cameras. Remember, it wasn't acceptable when the New England Patriots were doing it. It should not be acceptable that the Houston Astros are doing it. And that's bothering me the most about this, because you're basically saying one part of it is okay, but the other part of it isn't. When it involves players, if it involves an individual player who basically has the same interest to win a game, maybe to make themselves look good a little bit more than winning the game, but they want to, they want to be the best so their team can be the best. We talk about players in baseball history that did steroids that led their teams to World Series championships. We're not talking about taking those World Series championships away. Now, we could, when it comes to the Houston Astros, a team that may not have been on a level in regards to their own interpretation of information, to use their information to a complete advantage to them and a disadvantage to the other team. There has to be some ramifications from that. And once again, it's a matter of whether they are guilty of it. And I'm not assuming that they are, but I think there should be a trial to do this. But here's the other part that kind of bothers me. Fans, and I talk about fans, that's people in the media. Media seems to be the biggest voice for the fans. So you'll see a report goes out there, and listen, a lot of writers and a lot of sportscasters, what they like to do is, hey, if they could throw a point that resonates with the fans, then you know what, you're going to get a lot of website clicks. You're going to get a lot of views of your article that you write, because it's something that appeals to the passion of the fans. And fans, well, as we all know, the word fan is short for fanatic. That means the most passionate of an individual sport that go out there and root for their teams, but love the sport as well. And obviously in different levels, some love their teams more than the sport, some love the sport more than their team, some love their team and their sport just as equally. But we understand now when situations come up, fans want to see blood. They want to see the results of somebody losing their job. The Brandon Taubman situation with the Houston Astros comes out, and he was in the wrong. He shouldn't have done what he did. He shouldn't have directed his ire towards that female reporter. He looked like a complete jerk. He looked immature. He looked like he was, for whatever reason, completely ignorant of the situation of domestic violence, and ended up losing his job, and deservedly so. But people in the public are going to want to see the worst happen to him. They're going to want to see that guy lose his job. They're going to want to see him, possibly, if it's at all possible, to serve some time in prison for that. And that's kind of the way we roll when it comes to wanting to see blood. Now, there's going to be people that are going to want to see the Houston Astros stripped of their 2017 World Series championship. Now, I mean, if you do that, I think at some point you got to figure out exactly how long this has been going on. Did it impact, their 2015 run when they fell a little bit short to the Cleveland Indians? Did it impact them this past year when they were in the World Series and lost to the Washington Nationals? 2018 when they lost to the Boston Red Sox. Remember, Alex Cora was the Houston Astros bench coach in 2017, took over as the Red Sox manager in 2018. How much does he know? He would certainly be a person of interest that you wanted to get a sworn statement, assuming something like this would go to trial. But yeah, you have to figure out exactly how long this has been going on. And fans, listen, if this is proven that this is what the Houston Astros did, and I won't say it anymore because I'm tired of repeating myself. So just assume that everything I say is with the assumption that the Astros are proven guilty here. Fans are going to want to see that 2017 World Series championship reversed and maybe given to the Dodgers. And all of a sudden we start doing in Major League Baseball at the professional level what we've done on an amateur level in college sports by basically, having games that we've seen, switching the result of them, even though we saw it with our own eyes. It's not good for sports. It's basically creating a false reality that's different from what we saw with our own eyes. So I don't agree with that, but I understand the perspective of the fans. And like I said, the fans are led by the media. And the media is leading the fans in this crusade to want to see the Astros brought down. They're not happy with the Astros because of some of the questionable things they've done in the past. They're not happy with the Astros because of Brandon Taubman and his, embarrassment and everything that ended up happening with him. They want to see the Astros go down. They want to see, that next team being given a World Series championship. But I don't think that's the proper way to go here. But going back to my original point, and hopefully if there's one thing about my show today that can get out there and people can understand that if we're not willing to go the full nine and prosecute a team and an organization to its fullest extent, then maybe we should lighten up on what we're doing with Major League Baseball players as we judge them to be Hall of Famers. we could have Hall of Fame type of players. Barry Bonds is one of the top 5 greatest offensive players to ever play in Major League Baseball. And if there is a case for one player that is not in baseball's Hall of Fame that should be, it should be made for Barry Bonds and nobody else. And I wonder how much this situation with the Houston Astros can impact the judgment of players that use performance-enhancing drugs. Because it seems to be okay, at least to this point, that teams cheat, but if players cheat, we want to blackball them from the sport. We want to get to a point where us as the fan feels like we are better than that player that cheated. Well, if we're not going to be judged as better than that team that cheated, if there's no ramifications for anything that happens to said team that cheated, then things should be changed as they apply to the individual player. We'll be back with you next week. Thank everybody for tuning in. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey, by Two Ways, One Passion Food Truck, located in Scranton, Pennsylvania, by, of course, JohnPielli.com. Be back with you Saturday. We'll do a little bit more football, basketball, but the show, we'll see how it ends up going out on YouTube. No Periscope video today. We may be done with Periscope altogether because Periscope doesn't save the videos to my iPhone and I have no use for it. So we'll see how it ends up working out. We're trying YouTube Live for the first time today. Of course, Facebook Live as always. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.